Live from Singapore, this is BBC News. The UK will purchase fighter jets capable of carrying nuclear weapons in an effort to bolster NATO's nuclear capability, as leaders of the alliance meet for a key summit in The Hague. A preliminary assessment seen by our US media partner reveals US strikes on Iran's nuclear sites may have only set the program back by months. Plus, the commander of a British aircraft carrier on a rare Pacific deployment tells the BBC he expects the warship to be closely monitored by the Chinese military. And coming up on Business Today, we hear from the managing director of the World Economic Forum, who says despite geopolitical tensions, there are reasons to be hopeful about global growth. Welcome to Newsday. Now, the UK government says it will purchase fighter jets capable of carrying nuclear weapons in a move that would significantly expand the UK's nuclear deterrent. The decision to purchase 12 US-made F-35A fighter jets will be announced at a key NATO summit happening in the Netherlands this week. 32 member countries, including the UK, are expected to agree to a new NATO target to spend 5% of GDP on defence. Ahead of the summit, President Donald Trump revealed private messages from the NATO Secretary-General, Mark Rutte, appearing to praise him for his criticism of the bloc and his push for more defence spending for European allies. Our Europe editor, Katja Adler, has this report.
Russia has been busy in Ukraine, while the world was distracted watching Iran.
It is simply unthinkable that Russia, with an economy 25 times smaller than NATO's, should be able to outproduce and outgun us. We must spend more to prevent war.
This is the man who holds peace in his hands. He says, Europe relies heavily on US troops and US military capabilities. Leaders worry Donald Trump could pull them out of the continent. He's a known NATO skeptic. This whole summit was essentially designed around wooing Donald Trump, trying hard to get him to commit to NATO and to the defence of all of its allies, trying so hard that the NATO Secretary-General used almost excruciatingly fawning language and even imitated Donald Trump's use of capital letters in a private message that the US president made public just before he got here. You will achieve something no American president in decades could get done, wrote Mark Rutte. Europe is going to pay in a big way, as they should, and it will be your win. 100,000 US troops are stationed in Europe. Many like these on a NATO training exercise are based in the east, close to Russia, to protect NATO allies. Donald Trump is not the first president to complain Europe must do more for its own defence. This time, Europe's listening.
We are here at the NATO summit at a crucial time because I think everybody recognises that the world is more volatile now than it's been for a long time. NATO is stronger now.
That's what Ukraine's president fervently hopes. And to get Donald Trump's buy-in, the UK and others here, bar Spain, will serve Donald Trump what he ordered. A pledge to spend 5% of national income on defence within 10 years. NATO leaders believe they have no choice, but the cash will be hard to come by. Katja Adler, BBC News, The Hague.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined by Rose Gottemoeller, former Deputy Secretary-General at NATO. Rose, great to be able to chat with you about this. Given that spending, NATO spending on the military equipment is going to be key to this summit, what do we make of then the UK announcing that it's going to be spending more money on aircraft, F-35A jets by the UK that will be able to carry nuclear weapons? That's quite significant, isn't it?
I think it's an important step, a very important step. Of course, NATO allies who have been basing states for nuclear weapons have all signed up to buy F-35s now and ensure that they are certified to be capable of carrying nuclear weapons. It's a big deal that the UK has now pledged also to buy these new aircraft and assure that they are also capable of carrying nuclear weapons. And presumably that would be to bolster the role of the independent UK nuclear deterrent should it be called upon to strengthen extended nuclear deterrence in NATO Europe against a Russian threat. So I think it's a significant step, it's an important step, and it's a very serious step by the UK government.
And you were NATO's Deputy Secretary General in President Trump's first term. He's played a significant role in NATO members committing to an increase in spending, hasn't he?
He has indeed, and I very well remember his first visit to NATO in May 2017 when he shocked the entire NATO alliance at that time by threatening not to live up to the so-called Article 5 commitment to defend NATO member states should they be attacked. And that was a huge shock at the time, and it was really based on his complaint that NATO countries were free-riding, seriously free-riding on the United States and not spending enough for their own defense. So I will say that that has been remedied now, not only in this recent period, but beginning in his first term in office when NATO got the message. Now I think the message has been bolstered by Russia's aggression against Ukraine. So there is truly a threat to NATO Europe that the NATO member states are taking seriously.
Yeah, and when it comes to events in Ukraine, is President Trump going to be meeting President Zelensky, do you think? And what will they be looking to discuss?
Well, it seems like it. Both President Zelensky and Trump said on his flight over to The Hague that he hoped the meeting could take place. So I hope it will take place. It will be not a big formal session, but more of a, we call them pull aside. And I think of it similar to what we saw when Zelensky and Trump got together on the margins of the funeral for Pope Francis a couple of months ago. There was a photo of them very seriously talking together in the Vatican. So I hope that we'll see a serious meeting this time, but it will be brief and it will be rather informal, I would think.
And before departing for the summit, President Trump was asked whether the United States remains committed to NATO's Article 5 clause. He said it depends on your definition and that he would share that definition at the summit. Should NATO members be concerned?
Well, what else is new? I mentioned that he already raised doubts back in May of 2017. So he's been raising them right along. And frankly, it'd be a huge headline if suddenly Trump embraced Article 5 and said he was fully committed to it. It's not the way he's talked about that important treaty commitment of the United States of America. But that's the Trump way. And I don't think we should expect anything else. He certainly knows how to continue to draw attention to this matter. And from his perspective, it continues to make the NATO members nervous enough that they are ponying up new funds, and that is important, and I think it's all important for NATO itself, not just for Mr. Trump.
And just quickly, do you think events in the Middle East could overshadow this summit?
I think as long as the ceasefire continues to hold overnight, that Trump will be taking a victory lap in The Hague among the NATO allies and saying, look what I was able to do. You had your diplomats attempting a solution last week and it didn't work, but now I've been able to get this ceasefire in place. So I don't expect it will be a big topic of discussion as a crisis per se, but I think the allies should expect that Mr. Trump will be taking some good credit for his own success.
Rose, thanks very much for your time. Really appreciate your insight and your perspectives. Rose Gottemoeller there, former Deputy Secretary General at NATO. And speaking of events in the Middle East, a truce between Israel and Iran appears to be holding for now, with both countries claiming to have secured victory in their 12-day war. The Israeli Prime Minister said existential threats to his country had been removed, and the Iranian president said Tehran had ended the conflict with a great victory. And this comes after President Trump accused both sides of initially violating the fragile ceasefire. Our North America editor Sarah Smith has more from Washington.
Israel launched a barrage of airstrikes on Tehran as the ceasefire deadline approached, also striking Iranian missile launchers in a last-minute, all-out assault. Donald Trump was furious with both Iran and particularly Israel for not respecting the deal.
I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. But I'm really unhappy if Israel's going out this morning because the one rocket that didn't land, that was shot.
We often see President Trump exasperated, but never actually swearing like this.
You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Understand that Israel has pushed him too far this time, just when he's on his way to take a victory lap at a NATO summit in The Hague, but only if the truce holds. He posted on social media, Israel, do not drop those bombs. If you do, it's a major violation. Bring your pilots home now. Then from on board Air Force One, in a call to the Israeli Prime Minister, which the White House described as exceptionally firm and direct, Trump demanded he stick to the ceasefire. And then posted again saying, Israel is not going to attack Iran. All planes will turn around and head home while doing a friendly plane wave to Iran. Nobody will be hurt. The ceasefire is in effect.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be with a friend of mine.
The NATO Secretary-General, Mark Rutte, is hosting Donald Trump in The Hague. They get on well, but he might be very surprised to find the text messages he sent praising the president posted on social media. He wrote, Mr. President, dear Donald, congratulations and thank you for your decisive action in Iran. That was truly extraordinary, something no one else dared to do. It makes us all safer.
About aggression by
On Air Force One, Mr. Trump is already talking about his desire to agree a ceasefire in Ukraine.
You know, I'd like to see a deal with Russia. As you know, Vladimir called me up. He said, can I help you with Iran? I said, no, I don't need help with Iran. I need help with you.
Sarah Smith, BBC News, Washington.
The Pentagon has dismissed as false U.S. media reports that the bombing of Iran's nuclear facilities had only destroyed core components of the country's atomic program and only set it back by a few months. Several media outlets were quoting a preliminary assessment of the U.S. Defense Intelligence Agency. Well, for more on this, I'm joined from Washington by our North America correspondent, John Donnison. John, tell us more about what these reports detail.
Well, this was three intelligence officials who spoke initially to CNN and also to the New York Times. They spoke anonymously, but they were referring to a preliminary report, as you were saying, into the level of damage suffered by these nuclear facilities in that attack on Saturday in the early hours of Sunday morning. And what this report says, apparently, is that while the facilities were badly damaged, it has not significantly set back Iran's nuclear ambitions. So it said it had pushed them back by up to 3 months. Now, before the attack, the American assessment was that at best, at a push, Iran could build a nuclear weapon within 3 months. So they now think that's been pushed back to 6 months. But really, what these officials are saying basically completely contradicts what the White House has been saying ever since those attacks unfolded on Saturday night.
Yeah, and the White House has been very quick to rubbish them, including the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth. Tell us more about how they've been responding.
Yes, he did. He's basically outright rubbished them. He said that the nuclear facilities had been completely obliterated. The White House press secretary said you can't drop 30,000-pound bombs onto some facilities and not have them completely destroyed. So the truth is, I just think we don't actually know at the moment the extent of the damage, but I do think over time we will know, and that is because the Israelis, well, their intelligence services, they have infiltrated Iran's security system so successfully, and they will no doubt be trying to find out to what extent those ambitions have been set back. Now, Israel's Prime Minister on Tuesday evening in an address to the nation on TV, well, he said that they had been completely destroyed, but he's trying to sell his actions over the past 12 days as a victory to the Israeli public. So I think it's going to take time to see the extent of the damage, but certainly there are concerns amongst intelligence officials here in the US that it hasn't really been a significant setback, and where that leaves us in terms of future relations between Iran and Israel and where this might go in the coming months and years, well, it leaves a lot of questions to be answered.
Yeah, John, it certainly seems like the battle for the narrative as well is just as contentious as the battle, the physical battle as well. Is there any way to independently verify, besides relying on Israel and besides relying on the Pentagon, what has actually happened?
Well, look, no, there isn't, to be honest. I mean, all intelligence agencies, I'm sure most Western intelligence agencies, will be working to try and assess the extent of the damage, but it's very, very difficult. Iran is not going to be allowing the IAEA inspectors in to inspect these sites, so it is very, very difficult to know. And Iran is probably going to want to keep secret the extent of the damage. But what these officials were saying, that crucially, those 500 kilos or so of enriched uranium, which is what is essential in order to build a nuclear weapon, well, they had been moved from the key sites before the attack happened.
John, thanks very much. I appreciate that context from you, North America correspondent there, John Donnison. Around the world and across the UK, this is BBC News.
When the weather can't make up its mind. We can help you make up yours. Check on BBC Weather.
In a world where media is evolving faster than ever before,
where stories are shared in bite-sized portions,
influencers change minds,
and news arrives in an instant.
We hear from media insiders on their perspective on the world.
And uncover the stories behind the latest trends. Join us for The Media Show on BBC News.
Now, at the top of the hour, we're telling you about that NATO summit that's beginning in The Hague. And while that's underway, a British aircraft carrier has docked here in Singapore as part of a rare deployment in the Asia-Pacific. The presence of the HMS Prince of Wales is part of an 8-month deployment involving other UK allies and comes just a week after China criticised the passage of another British warship through the Taiwan Strait. I spoke with the Carrier Strike Group's commander and began by asking him what the deployment signals to regional powers.
So to our partners and allies, it's about reassurance, it's about our commitment to the region as well, and about our absolute commitment to uphold a rules-based international order. £286 billion worth of trade between the UK and the Indo-Pacific represents about 20% of it. Maritime trade routes are so important, and therefore part of our reason to be here is to demonstrate our commitment to maintaining a free and open Indo-Pacific.
China might take a very different view of the presence here in the region. How do you think, or how are you looking to manage that potential interaction?
We're operating in international waters with a strike group. In the same way that China has every right to sail its ships in international sea space. I almost expect they'll come and want to watch what we're doing. This is a highly capable 5th-generation carrier strike group, and lots of other parties will wish to witness what we're doing. So, but I do recognise it'll be safe and professional. That's the way we operate in the maritime. It's really clear, and we'll respect each other and observe what each other do.
And in practical terms, are there communication lines? Is there information being shared about your movements, about what you'll be doing, to avoid any potential
I mean, not specifically about what our mission is, but do you know what, at a really basic level, between ships, bridge-to-bridge communication, we always make sure that we offer a hello to each other and just make it really clear what our intentions are to avoid any kind of misunderstanding.
This sort of operation was carried out in 2021. Yes. The world has significantly changed since then. As we've seen from wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, warfare itself has changed. How is
operations such as this looking to change with the times, with the introduction of drone warfare, for example, hypersonic missiles, that sort of thing?
I think we all recognise that warfare and the way warfare occurs is evolving rapidly. So we have to evolve with that. We have to learn the lessons and implement those. So during this deployment, we will be operating uncrewed aircraft, initially just on their own, but increasingly through the deployment we'll integrate them with crewed aircraft. So you'll have manned and unmanned aviation happening. That sets us on the pathway, as the SDR has stated, to get closer to a position where we're increasingly uncrewed where able, but only crewed where we must. And we start to set those conditions now, and this is the perfect place to do it, both with the strike group, with its ships, its escorts, and the air wing, that we can start to develop some of those tactics and capabilities.
To the Middle East, where rescuers in Gaza say at least 46 people waiting for aid have been killed by Israeli fire in 2 incidents in the central and southern Gaza. UN agencies have condemned the US and Israel-backed food distribution system, which, with one official calling it a death trap. Such deadly incidents have recently become a near-daily occurrence since the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation began work in late May. The Israeli military said it had received reports of injured individuals as a result of IDF fire. The military added that it was reviewing the incident. Thailand has imposed restrictions on all travellers heading into Cambodia as the 2 countries remain locked in a bitter border dispute. The ban applies to any vehicle or person trying to cross into Cambodia from checkpoints across several Thai provinces, as well as foreign tourists flying into Siem Reap. The military said in a statement the new restrictions matched the current security situation. Bilateral relations between the 2 countries are at their worst in more than a decade after armed clashes along the border in May. Now it's time to cross over to our Asia business correspondent, Ranjana Tiwari, who's live in Tianjin, China, with all the latest business and market news.
Hello and welcome to this special edition of Business Today from Tianjin, China. I'm at the World Economic Forum, a key economic meeting which is also known as Summer Davos. What we're seeing on the markets is a second straight day of climbs on Wall Street. Oil is inching up slightly now as investors really weigh that very fragile truce in the Middle East. And that's really the sentiment that I'm hearing from business leaders and policymakers at this meeting, that there are many challenges to the global economy, but there are some hopes for optimism as well. I've been speaking to the managing director of the World Economic Forum, Mirek Dusek, and he told me more.
Well, we are seeing, of course, fractures in terms of trade and investment, but you are also seeing diplomacy. What is quite interesting, geopolitics and geoeconomics aside, you have some, again, secular trends. After DeepSeek, you have just more attention being paid by investors from around the world to the China AI ecosystem.
Do you think these secular trends that you talk about are enough to be able to lift global growth or give them a boost going forward?
So I think it's very important because trade has been an important engine of growth over the past decade or two. And so it's very important that we keep working at it. Having said that, of course, it is clear, particularly certain technologies are now deployed to industry, deployed to markets, and have a huge potential to help us with new sources of growth and competitiveness. Obviously, they need to be deployed responsibly, which is also something that, for example, when it comes to AI, we tend to work a lot on.
What's your sense? Is China willing to accept the investment and the interest from foreign companies to do business here or to set up their manufacturing here?
At this summit, which is a global summit, but there has always been a section where people just come here from around the world to also understand what's going on with the Chinese economy. Obviously, there is a move toward an innovation-driven trajectory, and for example, in the field of the energy transition, if you look at the different technologies, batteries, solar, it's well known. There are leaders on the commercial side that are global leaders in those technologies. But there's been also, of course, discussions around then how do you particularly make consumption and the demand-driven part of the economy better.
Well, Mirek Dusek there. Well, one of the biggest challenges to the global economy is inflation, because if inflation doesn't come down, central banks around the world cannot lower interest rates. And in the US, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell has been testifying in Congress, and it doesn't look like interest rates are going to come down there either. Here's Michelle Fleury with more.
There are growing divisions inside America's central bank. Two Fed officials, both appointed by President Trump, are calling for a rate cut as early as next month. But 7 others say there is no need to move this year. On Capitol Hill, Fed Chair Jerome Powell pushed back on the idea of a July rate cut.
I wouldn't want to point to a particular meeting. I don't think we need to be in any rush because the economy is still strong.
Mr. Powell defended that stance, saying the Fed needs more time to understand how prices are reacting to the president's trade policies. Still, lawmakers pressed him on why the Fed remains so focused on tariffs, especially with inflation looking modest.
I've heard for months now that the sky is falling, but it seems at this point at least that the inflation rate is pretty steady. And how many months of steadiness do you need?
That testimony came as Donald Trump once again lashed out at the Fed chair, writing on social media, "I hope Congress really works this very dumb, hard-headed person over." The president argues that other central banks are already lowering rates and the Fed should follow suit. Mr. Powell returns to Capitol Hill on Wednesday morning to face more questions, this time from the Senate Banking Committee.
We'll have plenty more from Tianjin in China and the state of the global economy throughout the day. For now, that's all. Thanks very much for watching.
Hello there. It's been very hot across parts of the Western Mediterranean, Western Europe generally, but over the next few days, from Wednesday onwards, we'll start to see the heat transfer towards more eastern and southeastern area for Greece, the Balkans, and across into the eastern Mediterranean parts of Turkey. So it's getting very hot there from Wednesday onwards. Now, further west, we start to see some big thunderstorms breaking out. Some of these could be pretty severe across central northern Spain in towards France and for Biscay, and they'll be drifting their way northeastwards. 39, 40 degrees for Nicosia, Antalya, not far off that for Athens. It will be hotter on Thursday and Friday, low 40s, perhaps 41 or 42 degrees there. For Iberia, cooling down slightly. We have that cluster of thunderstorms spreading northeastwards across France, the Low Countries. Ahead of it, it will be hot in Paris, quite humid too. 35, 36 degrees. That threat of thunderstorms and showers spreads across the Low Countries into Germany, Denmark, into southern Scandinavia. Could see some risk of flooding with some of these downpours, some frequent lightning, even some large hail. But it does leave in its wake some cooler and fresher air here. Meanwhile, temperatures there in Athens around 40 Celsius. So a cooler feel to things across the north and west of Europe for the end of the week and into the weekend. There'll be some sunshine around, dry and sunny in Lisbon, but for Athens, we're touching 41 or 42 on Friday, and then temperatures begin to fall closer to normal by the weekend.
This is better known to you and me as a flying car.
This is not your typical farm. It's food of the future.
A highly secure facility that monitors foreign governments' attempts to destabilise democracy.
Why are we so suited and booted for this task?
The idea is to learn more about how volcanoes behave so that we can better predict eruptions.
This is a prime location for big companies to show us their latest products.
I'm going to go in and have a look. Using technology, distribution is now 98% efficient.
This is the potential of electric power in the marine industry.
Can we fire it up?
Once we close the doors behind us, no one can hear you scream.
I better not touch it anymore.
This is one of the most incredible things I've ever done.
I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
Tech Now on BBC News.
Little bit of onion,
Thanks so much. It smells fantastic.
It's feeding time at the Liberty Sanctuary.
Sometimes I don't know where to find all this food. Sometimes in the evening I pray, what shall I give tomorrow?
Welcome to Hokkaido.
Thank you. This looks incredible. I had no idea they were so big. So this behind us is what this is going to become.
Yes, it's like the most exciting festival that happens in this region.
Here in the Maldives, sandbanks like this appear and disappear. They constantly change size and shape according to the seasons and the ocean's forces. And that really influences the way that the people live and adapt.
Inspiring travel on the BBC.
Global business news from the boardroom or grassroots. BBC News cuts through the jargon to add colour, depth and context. With live reaction from Wall Street and Asia, studio interviews with top CEOs and the latest innovations in technology. Talking Business.
Hello and welcome to Talking Business with me, Mark Lobel. On this show, the uneasy alliance between freedom and firepower. Another conflict rages in the world and defence spending is shooting up across the globe. In America, Donald Trump has announced plans for America's first $1 trillion military budget. And he's not alone. Nearly every country in the world is ratcheting